All right, today we're going to embark on a pretty incredible journey. We're diving into the minds of three absolute titans of Christian thought. We're going to explore their profound and, yes, sometimes challenging, but always fascinating worldviews, the very frameworks that have shaped belief for centuries.
So let's just start with maybe one of the most jarring sentences in all of American religious history. Wow. This is Jonathan Edwards at his most raw, his most intense. This is a statement that is absolutely designed to shock you, to wake you up, and to force a direct confrontation with the divine. It just immediately sets the stage for the high-stakes reality these thinkers were living in.
So, who exactly are our guides on this journey? Well, first we have the philosopher, Thomas Aquinas, who built this just towering cathedral of logic. Then you've got the revivalist, Jonathan Edwards, who came along and set the soul of a nation on fire. And finally, the preacher, Charles Spurgeon, whose voice just thundered with the drama of salvation. Three completely distinct minds, all on one shared pursuit of the ultimate truth. Now, to even begin to understand the others, we have to start with this foundational distinction from Aquinas. The thing that's so interesting here is how it contrasts two totally different ways of seeing God. On the left, you have the common idea, right? God is the supreme being. He's at the top of the cosmic ladder. But for Aquinas, this was a massive, profound error. He argued for the view you see on the right. God is not a being at all. He is being itself, the very ground of reality that allows anything and everything else to exist. The fancy term for this is ipsum esse subsistens. Yeah, it's a dense Latin phrase, I know, but the idea behind it is absolutely revolutionary. See, for you and me, what we are, our essence, is different from the fact that we are, our existence. But Aquinas says, for God, his essence is his existence. He is the pure, uncaused, totally self-sufficient act of to be. And this right here brilliantly illustrates the consequence of that idea. If God were just the highest being, his presence would have to compete with ours, kind of like two things trying to be in the same place at the same time. But as being itself, God can enter his creation without destroying it. And the perfect biblical image for this from Exodus is the burning bush. It's blazing with the divine presence, but it isn't consumed. In fact, it becomes more radiantly itself. You see, this isn't just some abstract philosophy. It leads to a really deep personal question. If God's presence actually makes you more you, not less, what does that mean for your life's purpose? How does it completely reframe the very act of prayer or your entire search for meaning? Okay, let's move to our next guide and see how this all connects. We're going to jump forward about 500 years to colonial America, right in the middle of the Great Awakening. Jonathan Edwards, looking at a population he felt was spiritually asleep, takes a single verse from Deuteronomy, "Their foot shall slide in due time," and builds one of the most unforgettable sermons ever on top of it. The logic of this sermon is it's relentless. First, he establishes that the danger isn't some far-off thing. No, you're already standing on a slippery, dangerous slope. Second, your potential fall, that's not someone else's fault. It's the natural result of your own weight, your own choices. And third, the only thing preventing that fall from one moment to the next is the active, sovereign will of God holding you up. And this, of course, leads to the central, challenging question of Edwards' entire work. Is he just painting a picture of a cosmic tyrant? Or is this the desperate plea of a loving God, using the language of terror like a spiritual alarm clock, trying desperately to wake people up before their foot does in fact slide? Now, let's turn to our final guide, the Prince of Preachers, Charles Spurgeon. He also talks about terror, but he sees it as the prelude to deliverance. Here, he's painting that famous scene from Exodus. Israel is trapped. The Egyptian army is breathing down their necks. The Red Sea is right in front of them. In his words, their hopes blighted and their joys ended. It's over. And then, the miracle. Spurgeon's language here is just pure poetry. He describes the parted sea not just as dry land, but as this corridor with a wall of alabaster on either side, with the waters themselves frozen by the lips of God. What an image! It's a picture of immense, perfectly controlled, saving power. And the triumph? It's absolute. The victory song that Moses sings isn't just about escape. It's about the total, complete destruction of the fret. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. Spurgeon really emphasizes the finality of it. There is not one of them left. Deliverance means the enemy isn't just defeated, it's gone. So, how does a revival like this happen? Well, Spurgeon, drawing from the prophet Ezekiel's vision of the Valley of Dry Bones, he outlines this two-part process. First, there's the human responsibility, preaching to the bones. You have to declare God's truth even to people who seem spiritually lifeless. But that alone just creates a stir. The second part, he says, is absolutely crucial, praying to the wind, pleading for the very breath of God's Spirit to give true life.
Spurgeon's dramatic story forces us to reflect, doesn't it? If our own deep struggles are a kind of Red Sea passage, then what are the pharaohs pursuing us in our lives? The habits, the fears, the circumstances. And what does that total, final deliverance we're seeking truly look like? This whole idea of an all-in commitment brings us right back to Jonathan Edwards. He really exemplified this intense, practical application of theology. He didn't just preach these ideas, he lived them with an almost unbelievable discipline. Get this, he penned 70 personal resolutions to govern every single moment of his life. Just listen to the sheer intensity of resolution number 6. Resolved to live with all my might while I do live. This isn't some vague wish to live well. It's a commitment to pour every single ounce of his energy and vitality into his existence. Every single day, a life of total conscious effort. And then there's resolution number 44, which shows the singular focus of that effort. Every action, every single one, had to be weighed against one purpose, the religious end. In Edwards' framework, there was just no room for divided loyalties or competing motivations. And here's where it all comes full circle. It's so cool. Edwards' passionate piety connects directly back to Aquinas' cool philosophy. See, for Aquinas, religion wasn't just a list of beliefs. It was a cardinal virtue. It was the moral excellence of rightly orienting your entire life, every choice, every action, toward God as your ultimate purpose, your last end. Edwards' resolutions are basically this virtue put into action. Despite all the fiery sermons, Edwards' view of history was profoundly optimistic. He believed that the preaching of the gospel in his day would gradually lead to a golden age of peace and faith on earth, the millennium. And he thought this would be followed by a brief, final rebellion, which would then trigger Christ's ultimate return and the final judgment. It's a vision of history moving toward glorious fulfillment. So there you have it. We've journeyed from Aquinas' mind-bending vision of God as being itself, through Edwards' urgent call to wake up, all the way to Spurgeon's high drama of divine deliverance. All three of them saw life as an epic journey with the highest possible stakes, a journey defined by God's glory and an ultimate triumphant hope. And that leaves us with a final question for our own time. In a world that offers 1,000 different paths and values, what are the unwavering principles, the core resolutions that guide your journey?